Rain hammered the broken tiles of the main hall. Each dropped a tiny hammer against Li Yang's skull. He stood beneath the sagging eaves, his robe soaked through, staring at the collapsed altar where the vermilion bird Sect's emblem, a faded phoenix, lay cracked in two. 3 hats. A leaking roof. A mountain of debt that weighed heavier than the storm clouds above. He clutched the parchment in his hand, the ink bleeding from the moisture. The previous sect master's final words, "Xinhao, beneath the ruin lies the heart. Seek the door when all hope fades, Xinhao." A voice echoed from the courtyard gate. "Li Yun. Tomorrow, the debt collector comes. If you have nothing, we'll take the land." Li Yun didn't answer. His fingers traced the emblem on the altar, feeling a faint warmth beneath the cold stone. Desperation clawed at him. He had no money, no disciples, no future. Only this crumbling wreck and a cryptic note. He knelt, pressing his palm against the cracked phoenix. The stone shifted. A grinding sound rose from below as the floor split open, revealing a narrow stairwell descending into darkness. Dust and cold air rushed out, carrying the scent of ancient incense. Li Yun grabbed a lantern from the wall, its oil nearly gone, and descended. The steps were slick with moss, worn by centuries of fate he would never know. At the bottom, a heavy bronze door stood sealed, its surface etched with dancing phoenixes and coiled serpents. A circular depression sat at its center, shaped like the emblem he still held. He pressed the broken phoenix into the depression. It clicked. The door groaned open, revealing a vast hall lit by ghostly blue flames that flickered in braziers along the walls. Pillars of black jade rose to a ceiling lost in shadow. At the far end, 9 stone pedestals stood in a semicircle, each bearing a sealed urn. And in the center of the hall, a spectral figure coalesced, a woman in flowing robes of mist, her eyes like dying embers. Her voice resonated in his skull, not through his ears. "You who inherit the Vermilion Bird Sect, do you accept the burden of our legacy?" Li Yang's throat tightened. "What legacy? I'm drowning in debt. I have nothing." "You have this hall," she whispered. "The ancestral manifestation hall. Here, disciples bond with the spirits of our fallen masters. They gain forbidden arts, ghostly allies, power to reshape the world. But the pact demands a price." "What price?" 10 years of your lifespan. A seal upon your soul. In return, the hall will answer your call. You may summon phantom warriors, raise spectral shields, and grant your disciples the boon of an ancestor's ghost." Li Yang's hands trembled. 10 years. He was 23. 33 was old in this dying empire, if he lived that long. But without the hall, he had nothing. The debt collector would take the land, and he'd be dead in a ditch within a week. "I accept," he said. The spectral woman raised her hand. Blue fire lit from the braziers, swirling around Li Yun, searing into his chest. He gasped as pain lanced through him, not physical, but deep, as if something vital was being torn away. He felt years drain from his bones, a weight settling on his soul. Then the fire receded. The hall fell silent. "The pact is sealed," the ghost said. "You may now summon the first guardian." Li Yun collapsed to his knees, gasping. He felt older, heavier, but also connected. The hall hummed with energy, its stones vibrating with power just beneath his skin. Above, the bronze door slammed shut. Footsteps echoed from the stairwell, heavy, many. The debt collector's men. They had found the entrance. "Li Yun, come out or we burn this place to the ground," a voice shouted. Panic surged through him. He looked at the pedestals, at the urns. "I need help. Now." The spectral woman pointed to the nearest urn. "Call the first. Speak its name." He didn't know the name, but the hall whispered it into his mind. "Xinhao Kalen, the Phantom Warden, Xinhao." "Kalen," he breathed. The urn shattered. Mist poured out, coalescing into a towering figure in ancient armor, its eyes burning with cold blue fire. A phantom warrior, 7 feet tall, wielding a spectral blade that dripped ghostly light. It turned to Li Yun, its gaze empty of warmth. Ancient malice flickered in those eyes, a hunger older than the Empire. "Master," it rasped. The door above splintered. Boots thundered down the stairs. Li Yun pointed up. "Stop them." The phantom warrior ascended without a sound. A moment later, screams rang out, short, brutal, then silence. Li Yun stood alone in the hall, the ghost woman watching him with an unreadable expression. The phantom returned, its blade clean, and knelt before him. "The intruders are no more," it said. Li Yun's heart pounded. He had killed men, debt collectors, but they would have killed him. He forced the guilt down. He had a sect to rebuild, a pact to fulfill, and a ghostly army at his command. But as he looked into the phantom's burning eyes, he wondered, had he made a deal with the savior, or with something far darker? Li Yun left the ruined sect at dawn, the phantom warrior Kalen a silent shadow at his back. The road to the capital was a ribbon of cracked stone winding through fields of withered crops. Farmers watched him pass with hollow eyes, their hands stained with the dust of a dying harvest. The Empire was bleeding, and every mile closer to the capital showed another wound, a burned village, a collapsed bridge, a line of refugees shuffling southward. Li Yun tightened his grip on the ancestral shield strapped to his arm. He needed disciples, not ghosts. The manifestation hall had given him power, but power without people to wield it was just a monument to loneliness. By midday, he reached the Iron Gate, the capital's eastern entrance. Guards in faded imperial livery stopped him, demanding coin for passage. Li Yun paid with the last silver from his inheritance, feeling the weight of poverty settle deeper into his bones. The streets beyond were a chaos of merchants, beggars, and soldiers. The air smelled of smoke and rotting fruit. He moved through the crowd, scanning faces for anyone who might fit the sect's desperate need. A blacksmith's apprentice with calloused hands. A street urchin with quick eyes. But none of them looked like they would follow a man with 3 huts and a mountain of debt. Then he heard the commotion. A crowd had gathered near the Jade Fountain Square, voices rising in a mix of outrage and fear. Li Yun pushed through, Kalen's incorporeal form slipping ahead to clear a path. At the center, 4 imperial guards were dragging a young woman toward a barred carriage. She was dressed in a torn silk robe, her black hair wild around a face of sharp, defiant beauty. Her wrists were bound with chains, and her lips were stained a faint purple, the residue of some exotic poison. A courtier lay on the ground nearby, his face swollen, his breath a wet rattle. The crowd whispered her name like a curse, Princess Shui. She tried to kill Lord Feng, a merchant muttered. Poured nightshade into his wine because he called her a witch. Another man spat. She is a witch. The emperor should have drowned her at birth. Li Yun watched the guards shove her into the carriage. She did not struggle. Her eyes were calm, almost amused, as if she had already accepted her fate. But when her gaze swept the crowd, it paused on him. On the ghost at his side. Her lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. He made a decision. Kalen, he whispered. Distract them. The phantom warrior dissolved into mist, then reformed behind the carriage. A spectral blade carved through the air, severing the reins of the horses. The animals reared, screaming, and the guards scrambled to control them. In the chaos, Li Yun darted forward, pressing a hand to the carriage's lock. He had no skill with locks, but Kalen's blade could cut through iron. The door swung open. Shui looked up at him, her purple-stained lips parting in surprise. Come with me, Li Yun said. I have a sect. It's ruined, but it's yours if you want it. She studied him for a long moment, then laughed a low, musical sound that cut through the noise. You're either a fool or a madman. I poisoned a noble. The court will hunt me to the ends of the empire. I know. He held out his hand. I'm offering you a place where no one cares about your past. Only what you can become. She took his hand. Her skin was cold, and he felt a faint tingle where their fingers touched the residue of her poison. Lead the way, Sect Master. They fled through the alleys, Kalen a rear guard that cut down any guard who followed too closely. By nightfall, they were back on the road to the Vermilion Bird Sect. Shui walked beside him in silence, her chains gone, her torn robe wrapped around her shoulders. She did not ask where they were going. She did not ask what he wanted from her. She simply followed, her eyes scanning the darkness with the alertness of a predator. When they reached the sect's broken gate, she stopped. This is it. This is it. She looked at the collapsed main hall, the overgrown courtyard, the three huts leaning at precarious angles. Then she laughed again, but this time there was something softer in it. It's perfect. No one will look for me here. Li Yun led her to the hidden entrance of the ancestral manifestation hall. The stone door ground open, revealing the spiral staircase descending into torchlight. Shui did not hesitate. She walked down as if she had been here before, her bare feet silent on the worn steps. At the bottom, the spectral woman waited, her translucent form glowing faintly in the chamber's gloom. A new disciple, the woman said. She carries the scent of nightshade and sorrow. She will do. Shui's eyes narrowed. What is this place? A trial, Li Yun said. If you survive, you bond with one of the sect's ancestors. You gain power. But it costs you something. Years of your life. A piece of your soul. She turned to face him, her expression unreadable. How many years? I don't know. It depends on the ancestor. She nodded once, then stepped into the circle of torches at the hall's center. The spectral woman raised her hands, and the air thickened with a green mist. Shui coughed, her skin paling as the mist seeped into her pores. Then she stopped coughing. She stood still, her eyes closed, her lips moving in a silent conversation with something only she could see. The mist swirled around her, forming the shape of a gaunt man in tattered robes, the Plague Lord. His hollow eyes met Shui's, and she smiled. I accept, she said. The mist collapsed into her body. She gasped, her hands fly into her chest, and for a moment, Li Yun saw her age lines appearing at the corners of her eyes, a single gray streak threading through her black hair. Then the signs faded, and she opened her eyes. They were green now, the color of new leaves and old venom. 5 years, she said softly. I gave 5 years. But I can feel every poison in the world now. They sing to me. She raised a hand, and a wisp of green vapor curled from her palm. I am immune to all of them. And I can share the gift. Li Yun felt a chill run down his spine. The plague mist technique. Yes. She grinned, and her teeth were stained green. I can make armies sick. I can make cities fall. I can be your weapon. He shook his head. You're not a weapon. You're a disciple. Her grin softened into something almost vulnerable. We'll see. They climbed back up into the night. The stars were cold and sharp above the ruined sect. Shui stood at the edge of the courtyard, breathing in the air as if tasting it. Then her eyes snapped toward the shadows near the broken gate. A figure crouched there, a man in dark leathers, a spy's dagger in his hand. He had been watching. He had seen everything. Shui did not move. She simply looked at him, and her eyes glowed green. The spy opened his mouth to scream, but no sound came out. His skin blackened, veins of rot spreading across his face like cracks in dry earth. He collapsed, his body dissolving into a puddle of black sludge within seconds. Li Yun stared at the remains, his heart pounding. You didn't have to kill him. He was a warlord spy, Shui said, her voice flat. He would have told them everything. This is what I am now, Sect Master. Can you handle it? He met her green eyes and saw the ghost of the Plague Lord smiling behind them. I have to. The border town of Thornwall reeked of sour ale and desperation. Li Yun pulled his worn cloak tighter as he stepped over a pile of rotting cabbage, the mud sucking at his boots. Princess Shua followed a step behind, her hood drawn low, but the way she scanned the crowd as if cataloging every weakness marked her as dangerous. The tavern ahead, the Rusted Nail, groaned with the noise of a brawl spilling out its doors. Inside, a circle of men cheered as a bear of a man threw a soldier through a table. The man had a tangled beard, wild eyes, and a left arm that hung slightly wrong, as if he'd forgotten how to use it. His right fist connected with another jaw, and the soldier crumpled. But 3 more rushed him from behind. He turned, too slow. Li Yun stepped forward. Iron hoof. The man froze mid-swing. The distraction cost him a fist caught his ribs, and he grunted, stumbling back. He spat blood and glared at Li Yun. Who's asking? Someone with a better fight for you. Iron hoof laughed, a bitter sound. I've had enough of fights. They took my warbear, my rank, my honor. Now I just want to drink until I forget. He turned back to the brawlers, but Shua moved. A faint green mist curled from her fingers, and the 3 soldiers who'd been closing in suddenly clutched their throats, gasping. They collapsed, not dead, but paralyzed, foam bubbling at their lips. The tavern went silent. Iron Hoof stared at Shua, then at Li Yun. What are you? The Vermilion Bird Sect, Li Yun said. We offer a new purpose. A bond with something older than empires. Iron Hoof's eyes flickered to his useless left arm. I'm broken. Broken things can be reforged. Li Yun held out his hand. Come see. After a long moment, Iron Hoof took it. Back at the sect, the ancestral manifestation hall loomed in the twilight, its stone walls slaked with moss. Iron Hoof stood at the threshold, his breath fogging in the cold air. This place feels hungry. It is, Li Yun said. But it gives back what it takes. Iron Hoof stepped inside. The hall's interior was a cavern of shadows, the central pedestal glowing with a faint blue light. He placed his hand on it. The room shuddered. A figure materialized, a massive warrior in furs, his eyes like embers, his chest scarred with claw marks. The Beast King Ancestor. You who lost your beast, the ghost rumbled. I will give you another. But the price is a piece of yourself. Iron Hoof's left arm went numb. He felt the strength drain from it, the muscles wearing. He gasped, but didn't pull away. In exchange, a wolf made of shadow and starlight stepped out from the pedestal, its eyes burning silver. It pressed its head against Iron Hoof's chest, and he felt the bond snap into place, a warmth that filled the hollow where his warbear had been. He left the hole with a limp left arm, but the shadow wolf paced at his heels, silent and deadly. That night, Li Yun sat in the main hall, reviewing the sect's meager ledgers by candlelight. The shadow wolf suddenly raised its head, ears pricked. A low howl escaped its throat, a sound that vibrated through the floorboards. Iron Hoof bolted upright from where he'd been sleeping by the fire. What is it? The wolf growled, facing the northern gate. Shua appeared in the doorway, her face pale. I feel them. Riders. Many riders. Li Yun's hand went to the ancestral shield at his belt. Warlord dance scouts. The plague rumors had reached him faster than expected. They were coming. The road to Thornwall's underbelly was slick with rain and filth. Li Yun pulled his cloak tighter, the damp seeping through the worn fabric. Beside him, Princess Shua's hood hid her pale face, but her fingers twitched a tale he'd learned to read. She was ready to unleash plague mist at the first sign of trouble. Iron Hoof walked a step behind, his shadow wolf a flicker of darkness at his heels, its red eyes scanning the alleys. News of a blind girl who danced with a blade and saw futures had spread like wildfire through the taverns. They found her in a crumbling warehouse, its wooden walls stained with old blood. The gang called themselves the Rusted Nails, a dozen thugs who used mace gift to ambush merchants. Their leader, a scar-faced brute named Goreth, sat on a crate, a rusted cleaver across his knees. Another fool looking to buy the girl's side. Goreth laughed, his men circling. Li Yun stepped forward. I'm here to free her. Goreth spat. You and what army? Shuai's mist bloomed from her palms, a green haze that coiled through the air. The thugs coughed, their eyes watering. Ironhawk's shadow wolf lunged, tearing through the first man's leg before he could scream. But from the shadows, May emerged a girl of maybe 17, her eyes milky white, a slender sword in her hand. She moved in a slow, deliberate dance, her bare feet silent on the grimy floor. Stop, she said, her voice soft. I see them coming. Before Li Yun could ask, she spun, her blade deflecting a crossbow bolt from a hidden alcove. Another turn, and she sliced the string of a second crossbow. Her dance was a map of the room's dangers, each step a prediction. Goreth roared and charged, his cleaver swinging. May sidestepped, her sword tracing a line across his wrist. He dropped the weapon, howling. How did you? I saw you fall, she whispered. Within minutes, the Rusted Nails were groaning on the floor, bound with their own ropes. Shuai dispersed the mist, coughing slightly. Ironhawk's wolf stood guard over Goreth, growling. May turned her blind gaze toward Li Yun. You're the Sect master. I dreamed of a hall of shadows and a voice calling my name. He nodded. Come with us. We have a place for you. Back at the Vermilion Bird Sect, the ancestral manifestation hall hummed with cold energy. May stood before the central altar, her sword held before her. The ghost of the Moonblade ancestor materialized, a tall woman in flowing robes, her eyes twin moons of silver light. You seek the path of the blade that sees all futures, the ancestor said. But sight demands sacrifice. Your sense of smell will fade. In return, your precognitive strikes will sharpen beyond mortal limits. May bowed. I accept. A silver light enveloped her, and she gasped. Her fingers trembled as the knowledge flooded her mind, the ability to see an enemy's move a full second before they made it. But as the light faded, she wrinkled her nose. The air. I can't smell the rain anymore. Li Yun placed a hand on her shoulder. But you can see what's coming. That night, they sat around a fire in the Sect's main hall. The shadow wolf lay at Ironhawk's feet, its eyes reflecting the flames. Shuai stirred a pot of herbal tea, her expression distant. May stared into the fire, her blind eyes unblinking. I saw something, she said suddenly, her voice low. When I danced tonight, the future showed me a battlefield. The fire crackled. Li Yun leaned forward. What kind of battlefield? Covered in green mist. A wolf with eyes of fire hauled at the moon. And a throne, made of bones, sitting atop a hill of corpses. Silence fell. Shuai's hand paused over the pot. Ironhawk's wolf whined. Li Yun felt a cold whisper brush his mind, the first ancestor's voice, faint but growing clearer. The empire is dying, the ghost hissed. You will sit on that throne, or you will die trying. Li Yun shook his head, but the image lingered. A throne of bones. And in the mist, a shadow that looked like his own. The messenger's horse was lathered and trembling when it clattered into the courtyard of the Vermilion Bird Sect. Li Yun stood at the door of the main hall, his robe still smelling of incense and old dust. The man threw himself from the saddle, thrusting a scroll sealed with black wax toward him. From Warlord Zhang, the messenger gasped, his eyes darting to the skeletal remains of the training grounds. You have 3 days to disband your sect and leave the northern territories. Refuse, and his army will march. You will be declared enemies of the region. Li Yun took the scroll. His fingers traced the seal, a hawk clutching a sheaf of grain. He broke it open, reading the bold, arrogant script. The words blurred as his mind raced. 3 days. He had 3 days to turn 3 broken disciples into a force that could stand against a warlord's army. He looked up at the sky. The sun was a pale disk behind the haze of autumn smoke. Tell your master, Li Yun said, his voice steady, that the Vermilion Bird Sect accepts his challenge. We will meet him on the field of battle in 3 days. The messenger's face twisted in disbelief. He mounted and rode away without another word. Li Yun watched him disappear down the mountain path, then turned back into the hall. Shua emerged from the shadows, her fingers stained green from her latest concoction. 3 days, she said, her voice flat. I'll need to test the new formula. The plague mist I used on the rusted nails was too indiscriminate. If we face Zhang's army, I need it to target only his soldiers, leave us untouched. Iron Hoof followed, his shadow wolf padding silently at his side. I've been practicing merging with the wolf, he said, his deep voice rumbling. If I can phase through solid matter, I can reach Zhang's command tent before he starts, even though I'm there. Mei stood apart, her blind eyes fixed on a point only she could see. Her sword rested across her lap, its blade catching the dim light. I've been seeing fragments, she said softly. A battlefield. Green mist. A wolf with eyes of fire. A throne made of bones. The vision is clear now, but the pieces don't fit yet. Li Yun nodded. Then we train. Each of you, refine your skills. I will learn what I can from the ancestral manifestation hall. He left them and descended the stone steps into the hall steps. The air grew cold, and the whispers of the dead thickened around him. He stopped before the central altar, where the first ancestor's tablet sat in shadow. A voice coiled through his mind, smooth as silk. You seek power to protect them. I can give it to you. But all power has a price. Li Yun knelt. Show me the ancestral shield. The hall shuddered. Ghostly light pulled around him, forming a barrier that shimmered with ancient runes. He felt the knowledge pour into him, a technique that could absorb and deflect attacks, but only if he fed it his own life force. 15 years. The price was 15 years of his lifespan. He accepted. Pain lanced through his chest, and he gasped, feeling the years drain away like water through a sieve. But the shield settled around him, solid and real. He could summon it now, a dome of spectral energy that would protect his disciples from the worst of Zhang's assault. For the next 2 days, they trained without rest. Xuan mixed her plague mist with a binding agent she distilled from nightshade and iron filings. She tested it on a captured rabbit. The creature convulsed and died within seconds, but the surrounding grass remained untouched. It works, she said, wiping sweat from her brow. The mist will cling to enemy bloodlines. It won't touch us. Iron Hoof spent hours in meditation, his shadow wolf swirling around him like a living cloak. He learned to dissolve his body into the wolf's form, becoming a flickering shade that could pass through walls. When he emerged, his eyes were hollow, and his hands trembled. It's like drowning, he said. But I can do it. Mei practiced against wooden dummies, her sword flashing in arcs that seemed to anticipate their positions before they moved. She dodged strikes that hadn't been thrown, her precognition sharpening with each repetition. By the end of the second day, she could defeat 10 opponents at once without opening her eyes. On the eve of battle, Li Yun collapsed onto his cot, exhausted. The first ancestor's whisper crept into his dreams as soon as his eyes closed. You have done well, the voice purred. But your shield will only hold so long. Use my full power, and you can end this in a single night. Li Yang's dream self stood in a vast throne room, the floor littered with bones. A figure sat on the throne, a man, with hollow eyes and a crown of thorns. The first ancestor. He extended a hand, and black fire danced in his palm. Take it, Li Yun. Take my power, and Zhen's army will fall before you. No casualties. No suffering. Just victory. Li Yun's hand reached out, trembling. The fire was warm, inviting, promising safety for his disciples. But at the edge of his vision, he saw Mei's vision, the throne of bones. And he saw himself sitting on it. He pulled his hand back. Not yet, he said. I will win this battle my way. The first ancestor's smile was cold. So be it. But remember, Li Yun, every time you refuse me, the price grows higher. Li Yun woke in darkness, his heart pounding. The dream lingered like smoke. He rose and walked to the window, staring at the distant campfires of Zhen's army. Tomorrow, they would fight. And he would find out if his way was strong enough. Dawn broke over the foothills, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and rust. Li Yun stood at the edge of the Sect's broken outer wall, his gaze fixed on the distant cloud of dust that marked warlord Zhen's approach. The ground trembled beneath the weight of 2,000 marching feet, a rhythm that promised annihilation. Princess Shui stepped up beside him, her breath misting in the cold air. Her fingers traced the rim of a small jade vial, her expression unreadable. They'll be in range soon, she said. The wind is in our favor. Li Yun nodded. Do it. Shui uncorked the vial and whispered a prayer to the Plague Lord. A pale green vapor rose, curling like a living thing before spreading down the slope. It moved with unnatural speed, threading through the grass and creeping into the soldiers' ranks before they could react. The first cough sounded like distant thunder. Within minutes, the front lines convulsed. Men dropped their spears, clawing at their throats as the mist invaded their lungs. Horses reared, eyes rolling wide, their riders collapsing in heaps. The orderly formation dissolved into chaos. Iron Hoof melted into the shadows, his form merging with the spectral wolf that padded beside him. They moved as one, silent and swift, cutting through the panicked throng toward the command tent at the rear. Li Yun watched them go, his hand resting on the ancestral shield's ethereal surface, a shimmer of gold that hummed against his palm. Mei stood apart, her blind eyes turned toward the battlefield. Her sword rested lightly in her hand, point downward. She breathed slowly, feeling the threads of fate twist around her. When an arrow whistled toward Shui's unguarded back, Mei moved without thought. Her blade intercepted the shaft, splitting it in two. She pivoted, her body flowing through a series of strikes that deflected 3 more arrows before they could reach their targets. They're aiming from the ridge, she said calmly. 12 archers. Li Yun raised his hand, and the ancestral shield expanded into a golden dome that covered his disciples. Arrows clattered against it like hail on a roof. Shui, push the mist deeper. Iron Hoof needs cover. Shui nodded, her face pale with concentration. She uncorked a second vial, this one filled with a darker, thicker smoke. It rolled down the slope like a wave, swallowing the rear lines. Screams rose, then choked into silence. Inside the command tent, Warlord Zhang watched his army crumble. His generals shouted conflicting orders, their voices drowned by the growing panic. He grabbed his sword, determined to rally his men, but a shadow detached itself from the tent wall and lunged. The shadow wolf's jaws closed around his arm, tearing flesh and bone. Iron Hoof emerged from the darkness, his blade pressed against Zhen's throat. Surrender, Iron Hoof growled. Or die. Zhang spat. You think this ends here? The court will. I said surrender. The warlord's eyes flickered to the tent flap, where his bodyguards lay in pools of blood. He dropped his sword. I yield. Iron Hoof bound him and dragged him outside. The army, seeing their leader captured, broke entirely. Soldiers threw down their weapons, fleeing into the hills. The plague mist dissipated, leaving behind a field of groaning, incapacitated man. Li Yun descended the slope, his disciples flanking him. He stopped before Zhang, who knelt in the mud, his face twisted with fury and humiliation. "You'll pay for this," Zhang hissed. "The Emperor will." "The Emperor abandoned this land long ago," Li Yun said quietly. "You're just another vulture picking at the corpse." He turned away, but a shout from the ridge made him freeze. A lone rider approached, bearing a yellow banner with the imperial seal. The messenger reined in his horse, his face pale as he surveyed the carnage. He unrolled a scroll and read aloud. "By order of His Imperial Majesty, the Vermilion Bird Sect is hereby declared a rebel organization. All members are to be arrested or executed. General Zhao of the Eastern Army is dispatched with 3,000 men to enforce this decree. Resistance will be met with total annihilation." The messenger rolled the scroll and tossed it at Li Yang's feet. "You have until sunset to surrender." He wheeled his horse and galloped away, leaving the sect standing in silence among the bodies of Zhang's army. Shuai's hands trembled. 3,000, we barely survived 2. Mei's blind eyes turned toward the horizon. "They'll be here in 3 days. Maybe less." Iron Hoof tightened his grip on his sword. "Then we fight." Li Yun picked up the imperial decree, his fingers tracing the crimson seal. In his mind, the first ancestor's voice whispered, soft and seductive. "You see now, don't you? The Empire will never accept you. Only through conquest can you protect what you've built. I can give you the power to crush them all. Just say the word." Li Yun closed his eyes, fighting the urge to answer. When he opened them, the sun had disappeared behind clouds, casting the world in shadow. "We need a plan," he said. "And we need it before Zhao's army arrives." Li Yun stood at the edge of the training ground, the imperial decree crumpled in his fist. The parchment was heavy with the seal of the Dragon Throne, its words branding him and his disciples as rebels. The morning air was cold, carrying the scent of pine and distant smoke from the village below. He could still hear the echo of the messenger's arrogant voice, "Submit or be annihilated." His disciples watched him from the shadow of the main hall. Princess Shuai leaned against a pillar, her pale fingers tracing the rim of a vial filled with her latest concoction. Iron Hoof sat on a stone, his shadow wolf curled at his feet, its spectral eyes flickering like embers. Mei stood apart, her blind gaze fixed on nothing, yet her hand rested on the hilt of her blade as if sensing an unseen threat. "What do we do, Master?" Shuai asked, her voice flat but edged with defiance. "We can't run. And we can't fight 3,000 soldiers alone." Li Yun opened his mouth to answer, but the whisper came first, a cold slither at the base of his skull. "Xinhao, let me teach you, child. I have the power to shatter armies, to turn their bones to dust. All I ask is a small price. Their loyalty. Their love. You will be their god, not their friend, Xinhao." He clenched his jaw, forcing the voice back. "We train," he said. "We find a way." That night, Li Yun could not sleep. The first ancestor's presence pressed against his mind like a fever. He lit a lantern and descended into the ancestral manifestation hall, where the murals of the sect's fallen masters seemed to move in the flickering light. At the far end, the sealed door to the deepest chamber groaned, and a figure emerged, not solid, but a shimmer of cold air and half-formed limbs. The first ancestor's face was a mask of ancient bones, its voice like grinding stone. "You refuse my gift. Foolish. The previous master was like you, proud, stubborn. He lasted 3 years before he begged me to take his soul. I did. I will offer you the same deal, but only once more." Li Yang's hand went to his ancestral shield, the bronze surface warm against his palm. "I am not him." "No," the ghost hissed. "You are weaker. You cling to these children as if they can save you. They will die, and you will watch, and then you will come to me." The ghost dissolved into the shadows, leaving Li Yun shivering. He spent the rest of the night in the hall, searching the archives. Scrolls spoke of the triad formation, a technique that required absolute trust and synchronization between 3 disciples bonded to 3 ancestors. It was dangerous, but it could amplify their power tenfold. At dawn, Li Yun gathered Shui, Iron Hoof, and Mei on the training ground. "I have a plan," he said. "But it demands everything from you. You must move as one, breathe as one, fight as one. If any of you hesitate, the formation will collapse." Shui smirked. "I've never hesitated in my life." Iron Hoof cracked his knuckles. "The wolf and I are ready." Mei simply nodded, her blade whispering from its sheath. For 3 days, they trained from sunrise to moonrise. Shui's plague mist was woven into the formation's outer edge, a toxic barrier that could melt armor. Iron Hoof's Shadow Wolf became the spearhead, its howl disorienting enemies. Mei's precognitive strike guided their movements, her predictions allowing them to dodge and counter in perfect harmony. They failed repeatedly. Shui's mist choked Iron Hoof's wolf. Mei's foresight clashed with Iron Hoof's charge, but slowly, they learned. By the 3rd evening, they managed a single seamless rotation, the air around them crackling with ghostly energy. Li Yun allowed himself a sliver of hope. But that night, the first ancestor struck back. Li Yun was sharpening a blade by the fire when a scream tore through the village below. He ran, his disciples at his heels. At the village square, a crowd had gathered around a man, a farmer named Chengpo, known for his quiet demeanor. But now his eyes were pits of darkness, and his voice was not his own. It was the first ancestor's voice, rasping and cold. "You hide behind your children, Li Yun," the possessed farmer said, his limbs jerking unnaturally. "But I will show them what you truly are. A coward. A failure. The sect will fall because of you." Chengpo's body twisted, and a wave of ghostly force sent the villagers scrambling. Li Yun stepped forward, his ancestral shield raised. "Release him. This is between us." The first ancestor laughed through the farmer's throat. "Then face me. Or let this man die." Shui grabbed Li Yun's arm. "Master, it's a trap." "I know," Li Yun said, his voice steady despite the cold dread coiling in his gut. "But if I run, I lose their trust. And if I lose that, I lose everything." He walked toward the possessed farmer, the shield glowing brighter as he channeled his will. The ghost's whispers grew louder, promising power, promising victory, promising an end to all his fears. But Li Yun thought of his disciples, their laughter, their trust, their broken paths that he had mended. He held onto that warmth like a talisman. "You want my soul?" Li Yun said, his voice cutting through the night. "Come and take it." The possessed villager, Chengpo, staggered toward the Sect's gates at dawn. His eyes were black pools, and his mouth moved in a rhythm that seemed older than speech. Ancient curses dripped from his lips like pus from a wound. The words themselves seemed to rot the air around him. "Li Yun," the voice that came from Chengpo's throat was not human. It was the grinding of stones, the hiss of dying fires. "You think you can bind me with your little formation? I have waited centuries. I will not be denied." Princess Shui stepped forward, her hand raised, pale green mist coiling around her fingers. "Master, let me poison him. I can make it sleep without killing." "No," Li Yun said. "The body is innocent. The ghost is inside. If we harm the vessel, we prove the court right that we are monsters." Iron Hoof's Shadow Wolf growled low, its spectral form flickering. Mei's hand rested on her sword hilt, her blind eyes fixed on something only she could see. "The ghost is not fully here," she whispered. "It is anchored in the manifestation hall. If we fight the vessel, we fight the echo. The true battle lies within." Li Yun nodded. He had known what he must do since the first ancestor first whispered in his dreams. The previous sect master had tried to reason, to bargain, to compromise. He had gone mad. Li Yun would not make the same mistake. He turned and walked into the ancestral manifestation hall alone. The hall was cold. The stone walls wept moisture, and the air smelled of old blood and older dust. The statues of the ancestors lined the walls, their stone eyes seeming to follow him. At the far end, the final statue, the first ancestor, glowed with a faint malevolent light. Its stone lips moved, and the voice filled the room. "You come to fight me, little master. You are a child playing with fire. I am the fire." Li Yun did not answer. He knelt in the center of the hall and pressed his palm to the floor. The ancestral seal technique required sacrifice. The previous sect master had paid with his mind. Li Yun would pay with his ears. He felt the seal activate, a burning sensation that spread from his palm up his arm, into his chest, into his heart. It felt like 100 needles threading through his veins. He gasped, but he did not stop. He poured his life force into the seal, watching the stone floor beneath his hand glow with runes that had not been seen in a century. "No!" the first ancestor roared. The statue trembled. Cracks spider-webbed across its surface. The ghost's presence in the hole pulsed like a dying heartbeat. "You fool! You waste your lifespan on a temporary cage. I will break free. I will." The voice cut off. The glow faded. The runes settled into a dull hum, and the hole fell silent. Outside, Chumpo collapsed. His eyes returned to normal, and he gasped for breath, confused and terrified. Shua caught him before he hit the ground. "It's over," she said. "You're safe." Li Yun stumbled out of the hall. His disciples turned to look at him, and their faces told him everything. May's sightless eyes widened. Shua's hand flew to her mouth. Iron Hope's wolf whined. Li Yun looked down at his hands. The skin was pale, the veins prominent. He touched his hair and felt the rough texture of gray strands mixed with black. "Master," Shua whispered. "You look older." Li Yun tried to smile. 20 years. A fair price for a temporary peace. He took a step, and his legs buckled. May caught him, her grip strong despite her slender frame. "You need rest," she said. "We will stand guard." They helped him to the main hall, where a small fire burned in the hearth. Li Yun sat heavily on a wooden bench, his body aching as if he had fought 100 battles. He stared at the flames, seeing the first ancestor's face in the embers. The ghost was silenced, but not destroyed. The seal would hold for months, perhaps a year. After that, the price would be higher. A knock at the door shattered the silence. Iron Hope's hand went to his weapon. "Who is it?" The door creaked open, revealing a man in worn robes, a ledger tucked under his arm. The debt collector. Li Yun recognized him from the first day he had inherited the sect. The man had come every month, demanding payment for debts the previous master had run up. But today, the man did not hold out his hand. Instead, he walked forward and knelt, his head bowed. "Sect Master Li," the man said, his voice trembling. "I came to warn you. The imperial court has placed a bounty on your head. 500 gold taels for your capture, 1,000 for your death. They have declared the Vermilion Bird sect enemies of the dynasty." Li Yun stared at the kneeling man. The fire crackled. The gray in his hair caught the light. "Why warn me?" he asked. "You are a debt collector. You owe me nothing." The man looked up, his eyes wet. "Because my daughter was one of the villagers the first ancestor possessed last year. She died screaming. I saw what that ghost did. And I saw you free Chumpo today. You are not the monster the court says you are." He paused. "I want to help." Li Yun closed his eyes. The weight of the sect, the ghost, the bounty, the debts, it all pressed down on him like a mountain. But when he opened his eyes, he saw his disciples watching him. Shuai's poison-green eyes, Iron Hope's steady gaze, Mei's blind confidence. They had believed in him when he had nothing. He would not fail them now. Then stand up, Li Yun said. Tell me everything you know about the court's plans. The moon hung low, a sliver of silver that barely pierced the ink-black sky. Li Yun sat cross-legged in the main hall, the gray streaks in his hair catching the faint light from a dying candle. His body ached a dull, persistent throb that reminded him of the 20 years he had traded for silence. The ancestral seal held, but the first ancestor's whispers had not returned. Not yet. A twig snapped outside. Then another. Li Yun's hand moved instinctively to the ancestral shield at his belt, a disk of jade and bronze that felt heavier than it should. He rose, his joints protesting, and stepped to the door. In the courtyard, shadows moved where shadows should not. 5 figures, clothed in black, advanced with silent precision. One raised a hand, and Li Yun saw the glint of a talisman yellow paper, red script, pulsing with a malevolent light. Wake the others! He shouted, but the words were swallowed by a sudden hum. The talisman flared, and a wave of pressure slammed into the sect. The air grew thick, heavy. The ghostly energy that usually thrummed beneath the soil vanished, leaving a hollow silence. Shua burst from her hut, her hair unbound, a vial already in her hand. She hurled it, and glass shattered against a hunter's chest. Green liquid sizzled, but the hunter did not flinch. He drew another talisman and pressed it to his armor. The poison evaporated on contact. Anti-magic, Shua hissed. They're sealed. Iron Hoof came next, his shadow wolf materializing beside him. But the beast flickered, its form unstable. The hunters advanced, and one threw a net woven with talismans that wrapped around the wolf, dispersing it into mist. Iron Hoof roared, his fists clenching as he charged. Mei stepped out last, her blind eyes turned toward the sky. Her hand rested on her sword, but she did not draw. I cannot feel the moonblade, she said, her voice calm. But I can still feel the wind. The hunters encircled them. Their leader, a scarred man with cold eyes, drew a blade coated in something dark. The court sends its regards. Surrender, and you will not suffer. Li Yun raised the ancestral shield. It was not a ghostly power, it was a physical artifact, forged in the Sect's golden age. The first hunter struck, and the shield caught the blow with a ring of metal. Li Yun staggered, his weakened body screaming. He could not summon the phantom warriors. He could not call on the first ancestor. He was just a man with a shield. Shua reached into her pouch and pulled out a withered black herb. She popped it into her mouth, chewing slowly. Her eyes widened as the poison flooded her veins. But she did not fall. Her body had been tempered by a lifetime of toxins. She exhaled, and a cloud of purple mist rolled from her lips. The hunters stepped back, but the mist clung to them, seeping through their talismanic protections. One coughed, then another. The poison was not magical, it was purely physical, refined from the deadliest plants in the empire. Iron Hoof fought with his bare hands, his muscles straining. He had been a beast-tamer, but before that, he had been a soldier. He ducked under a sword swing and drove his fist into a hunter's ribs. The man crumpled. Another hunter lunged, and Iron Hoof caught the blade between his palms, blood dripping as he twisted it from the man's grip. He struck with the hilt, and the hunter fell. Mei moved like water. Her sword traced arcs in the air, each step a prediction of where the next blow would land. She sidestepped a thrust, spun under a slash, and drove her blade into a hunter's shoulder. He screamed, dropping his talisman. The night air trembled as the seal weakened. Li Yun saw his chance. He lunged forward, the ancestral shield raised, and slammed into the leader. The man stumbled, and Li Yun brought the shield down on his wrist. The talisman-clad weapon clattered to the ground. The seal shattered. A rush of power flooded back. Shua's plague mist thickened. Ironhoof's shadow wolf reformed, howling as it tore into the remaining hunters. May's eyes glowed faintly as the Moonblade's presence returned. In moments, it was over. The hunters lay groaning or still. The leader, pinned under the shield, spat blood. You think this is a victory? He rasped. The court has worse. Much worse. Li Yun did not answer. He searched the bodies, finding pouches of coins, spare talismans, and a rolled parchment. He unrolled it, his breath catching. It was a map, marked with location cities, forts, and one place circled in red. Below it, in elegant script, ghost sealing array. Deployment, 3 weeks. He stared at the symbol. It marked the heart of the Vermilion Bird Sect. The court planned to destroy the manifestation hall. The map was spread across the cracked wooden table, its edges curled from damp. Li Yun traced the route with a finger, the ink smudging under his touch. 3 weeks. That was all the time they had before the ghost sealing array would be completed, a device designed to suppress the very spirit that gave his sect its power. The imperial fortress of Blackstone Keep loomed on the parchment, a dark star at the center of the court's campaign. We go tonight, Li Yun said, his voice flat. If that array activates, the manifestation hall becomes a tomb. Princess Shua adjusted the vial of powdered nightshade at her belt. The keep has 300 soldiers, a moat filled with leeches, and walls that have never been breached. And you want us to walk in and smash their toy? Yes. Ironhoof grunted, his shadow wolf pacing at his heel. I like the plan. Simple. May said nothing. Her blind eyes stared at a point beyond the wall, her fingers twitching as if tracing unseen threads. There will be blood, she whispered. But not ours. They moved at dusk, cloaked in the gray light of a dying sun. The road to Blackstone Keep wound through marshes where the air smelled of rot and stagnant water. May led, her steps sure despite her blindness, her sword dancer's instincts reading the terrain through vibrations in the earth. Every few minutes, she held up a hand, and they froze waiting for a patrol to pass, a guard to shift his gaze. Ironhoof's shadow wolf melted into the darkness, a flicker of black smoke that slipped through reeds and over crumbling walls. It returned with silent reports, 2 guards at the east gate, a patrol of 5 circling the western wall, and a faint hum of energy from the central courtyard. The array is there, Ironhoof said, pointing toward the keep's heart. Shua uncorked a small clay jar. A greenish mist seeped out, carrying the scent of rotting flowers. I'll give them something to remember. When you hear the screaming, move. She slipped away, a ghost in the twilight. Minutes later, a cough echoed from the barracks, then another, then a chorus of retching and panicked shouts. The guards at the east gate clutched their throats, collapsing into the mud. Li Yun led the charge through the unguarded entrance. The courtyard was a nightmare of stone and iron, dominated by a structure that pulsed with sickly light. The ghost sealing array was a lattice of black steel rods, each etched with runes that writhed like living worms. At its center, a crystalline sphere trapped dozens of spirits' wailing faces that pressed against the glass, their bodies dissolving into threads of light. Ancestors preserve us, Shui breathed, catching up. That's hundreds of souls. May drew her blade. We have minutes before the garrison rallies. Li Yun stepped forward, his hand reaching for the array. The moment his fingers brushed the steel, a shock of cold fire raced up his arm. The first ancestor's whisper slithered through his skull. Break it, and I will grant you the strength to shatter empires. But the price is steep, little sect master. He knew the cost. The ancestral shatter technique required a sacrifice of years, decades of his own life force. But there was no other way. Stand back, he ordered. His disciples obeyed. Li Yun pressed both palms against the array, closing his eyes. He felt the years drain from him like sand through a cracked hourglass. His joints ached. His vision blurred. The runes on the steel flared, then cracked, then exploded outward in a shock wave of splintered metal and freed spirits. The wailing souls soared into the night sky, their forms dissolving into the wind. The array collapsed into a heap of blackened slag. Li Yun staggered, blood trickling from his nose. His hair had grayed at the temples. 25 years, gone in a heartbeat. Shua caught him before he fell. "You fool," she hissed. "You absolute fool. It's done," he rasped. "Now we leave." But as they turned toward the gate, a figure emerged from the shadows of the keep's main hall. General Jiao walked with the measured stride of a predator who had cornered its prey. In his hand, a sword burned with pale blue fire, the same ghost-sealing energy that had powered the array. Behind him, 100 elite soldiers fanned out, their armor gleaming with fresh oil, their spears leveled. "Li Yun," the general said, his voice carrying the weight of imperial authority. "You've destroyed a valuable asset. I was hoping you would. It saves me the trouble of hunting you down." He raised his sword. The blue fire cast long shadows across the courtyard. "Surrender, and I will let your disciples live. Resist, and I will feed their souls to the same device you just shattered." Mei stepped in front of Li Yun, her blade singing as she drew it. "Ram," she said. "I'll hold them." "No," Li Yun said, forcing himself upright. "We fight together." But even as he spoke, the first ancestor's laugh echoed in his mind, a sound like grinding bones. "You cannot defeat him with your current strength. But I can lend you more. All you have to do is ask." Li Yang's hand trembled. The price of the next technique might be his life. And General Jiao was already charging. General Jiao's sword cleaved the night. It was not a blade of steel, but of pale jade, etched with runes that drank the moonlight. As he swept it forward, a wave of invisible force rippled outward and the air itself seemed to thicken. Princess Shua felt it first. The plague mist that had been coiling around her fingers dissolved like morning dew. She gasped, stumbling back. "The ghosts, they're gone." Iron Hawk's shadow wolf let out a choked howl, then dissipated into wisps of black smoke. The beast-tamer fell to one knee, clutching his chest where the beast king's bone had been severed. Mei's blind eyes widened. Her precognitive strikes flickered and died. She could no longer see the threads of future movement. Only the cold certainty of the present remained. Li Yun stood at the center of his disciples, his graying hair plastered to his forehead with sweat. The ancestral shield on his arm flickered, its glow dimming. He could feel the first ancestor's presence receding, pushed back by the jade sword's nullification field. 50 feet. That was the radius of silence. General Jiao advanced, his boots crunching on the gravel of the fortress courtyard. Behind him, 100 elite soldiers raised crossbows, their bolts tipped with silver that glowed with the same nullifying runes. "The Vermilion Bird Sect," Jiao said, his voice flat as a tombstone. "I expected more than children playing with borrowed power." Li Yang's mind raced. The ghost-sealing array was destroyed. The trapped souls were free. But they were trapped inside the fortress, with Jiao blocking the only gate. The walls were 30 feet high, sheer stone. Even Mei's foresight couldn't find an escape route. He looked at his disciples. Shuai's hands trembled. Iron Hawk's jaw was set, but his eyes betrayed fear. Mei stood calm, but her grip on her sword was white-knuckled. They had nothing. No ghosts. No techniques. Only flesh and steel against a general who had killed stronger men than them. "Surrender," Jiao said, "and I will grant you a clean death. Resist, and I will nail your corpses to the Sect gates as a warning." Li Yun closed his eyes. In the darkness behind his lids, he saw the first ancestor's face, a skull wrapped in shadows, grinning. You owe me, boy, the ghost whispered. But I can give you the strength to break his sword. All it costs is a little more of your life. How much? Li Yun thought. 30 years. A bargain, for the chance to live. He opened his eyes. His disciples were watching him, waiting for a command. He gave it. Ram. Before they could protest, Li Yun raised his hand and pressed it against the ancestral manifestation hall's mark on his chest. He felt the bond snap open, raw and bleeding. The first ancestor surged into him like a flood of ice water. His veins turned black beneath his skin. His heart stuttered. He screamed not in pain, but in the sheer weight of the ghost's will forcing itself into his mortal frame. The jade sword's nullification field shattered. A pillar of spectral light erupted from Li Yang's body, slamming into the sky. The ghost materialized above him, a colossal warrior of bone and shadow, 30 feet tall, wielding a spear made of solidified darkness. Its eyes were twin stars of malevolent blue. General Jiao's composure cracked. He raised his jade sword, chanting a sealing incantation, but the ghost was already moving. The spear swept down, and Jiao was forced to dive aside. The strike carved a trench 20 feet long into the stone courtyard. The elite soldiers scattered, their crossbow bolts bouncing off the ghost's spectral hide. Now! Li Yun roared, his voice cracking with age. His skin had wrinkled. His back had hunched. His hair was now pure white, thin and brittle. Shua grabbed Iron Hoof's arm. The eastern wall, there's a postern gate. I saw it on the map. Iron Hoof nodded, dragging Mei with him. The three disciples fled, weaving through the chaos as the first ancestor's avatar clashed with General Jiao. Jiao was a master of ghost sealing arts, but the first ancestor was no ordinary spirit. It was a fragment of a being that had once terrorized the empire. Every time Jiao's sword struck, the ghost reformed, laughing. Li Yun watched from the ground, his vision blurring. He could feel his heart struggling, each beat a thunderclap that shook his ribs. 30 years. He had traded 30 years of his life for this moment. He wondered if he had any years left to trade. The ghost turned its head, its blue eyes fixed on him. Remember, it said, its voice 1,000 whispers layered together. You owe me. Then it dissolved, retreating back into the hall. Jiao stumbled forward, his jade sword cracked, his armor dented. He saw Li Yun collapsed on the ground, and grinned. Your trick is spent, boy. But before he could strike, a crossbow bolt whistled from the shadow Shui, firing from the postern gate. It struck Jiao's shoulder, forcing him back. Master, come on. Iron Hope's voice. Li Yun forced himself to his feet, his legs trembling. He ran. He didn't look back. They escaped through the postern gate, into the forest beyond. The sounds of the fortress faded behind them. Li Yun collapsed against a tree, gasping. His disciples gathered around him, their faces pale. Shui touched his cheek. Master, you look old, he finished, managing a weak smile. I know. As they helped him deeper into the woods, the first ancestor's voice echoed in his skull, cold and triumphant. You owe me, boy. Next time, I will not be denied. Li Yang's knees buckled the moment the postern gate slammed shut behind them. The world swam, a blur of white hair falling across his eyes, the distant roar of General Jiao's shattered army, and the cold weight of the first ancestor's whisper still coiling in his skull. He didn't feel the ground hit. Only the frantic hands of his disciples catching him before he collapsed fully. Master! Shui's voice cut through the fog. Her arms wrapped around his shoulders, steadying him. Her face pale, smudged with ash and dried blood swam into focus. Iron Hoof, help me carry him. Mei, clear the path. Iron Hoof grunted, hooking one arm under Li Yang's knees while Shui supported his back. The shadow wolf padded beside them, its spectral form flickering in the twilight. Mei moved ahead, her blind eyes unseeing but her steps certain, her sword drawn and angled to sense any ambush. The forest path back to the sect was silent except for the crunch of leaves underfoot and Li Yang's ragged breathing. He tried to speak to tell them he was fine, but his voice came out a rasp, barely a whisper. 30 years. He had traded 30 years of his life for that desperate tact. His hands, once smooth and calloused from training, now looked like a man twice his age, wrinkled, thin-veined, trembling. He stared at them as Shui and Iron Hoof carried him through the broken gate of the Vermilion Bird sect. The three huts stood as they always had, roofs sagging, walls cracked. But now they felt like a tomb. Li Yang's gaze drifted to the ancestral manifestation hall at the center of the compound. Its doors were closed, but he could feel the first ancestor's presence pressing against his mind like a hot brand. "Xinhao, you owe me," Xinhao the voice had said. "Xinhao, next time, I will not ask Xinhao." They laid him on a cot in the main hut. Shui immediately began mixing antidotes and restorative herbs from her pouches, her movements precise and urgent. Iron Hoof stood guard at the door, his hand resting on the shadow wolf's spectral mane. Mei knelt beside the cot, her fingers brushing Li Yang's forehead. "Your pulse is weak," she said softly. "But you're alive. That's what matters." Li Yun closed his eyes. Sleep pulled at him heavy, dark, and tempting. But before he could surrender, a knock came at the door. Iron Hoof tensed. "Who goes?" A familiar voice answered, hoarse, apologetic. "It's me, the debt collector. I brought news." The man who entered was thin, with a scarred face and nervous eyes. He had once come to collect the Sect's debts, but after witnessing the battle with Warlord Dong, he had sworn loyalty to Li Yun. Now he bowed deeply, clutching a scroll. "Master Li," he said, "the capital is in chaos. General Jiao's defeat has spread like wildfire. 3 northern warlords have already declared rebellion against the court. They are fighting each other for territory, but they all fear you." Li Yun forced his eyes open. "Fear us? They think you're a sorcerer who commands ghosts. They're offering alliances or trying to. But there's more." The debt collector unrolled the scroll. 2 minor warlords, brothers named Feng and Bao, have sent envoys. They hate General Jiao. They want to join you. Shui looked up from her herbs. "Join us? Or use us?" "Both, likely," the man admitted. "But they bring grain, weapons, and 100 soldiers each. That's more than we have." Li Yun tried to sit up, but a wave of dizziness forced him back down. He stared at the ceiling, cracked wood, spider webs, dust. The sect was falling apart. He was falling apart. But the disciples, they were still strong. He turned his head to Shui. "You take command," he said, his voice barely audible. "Organize the defenses. Recruit from the refugees. I trust you." Shui's eyes widened. "Master, You're a princess," he interrupted. "You know politics, logistics, strategy. I'm just a man who made a bad deal." He managed a weak smile. "Don't let it go to waste." She hesitated, then nodded. Her jaw set with determination. "I won't fail you." That night, the sect began to transform. Shui organized the refugees who had fled Jiao's army, farmers, craftsmen, a few former soldiers. She assigned them to build new huts, dig a defensive ditch, and erect a wooden palisade. Iron Hoof took the strongest recruits and began training them as beast cavalry, using the shadow wolf as a demonstration. The spectral beast snarled and lunged on command, tearing apart straw dummies. The recruits watched with a mix of fear and awe. Mei, meanwhile, established a spy network. She used her precognitive strikes to sense danger before it arrived, sending runners to scout the roads and villages. Within 3 days, she had a map of every movement within 50 li every patrol, every merchant caravan, every scout from the warring warlords. The debt collector, now calling himself Steward Lin, managed the supplies. The alliance with Feng and Bo was sealed with a handshake and a shared cup of wine. Shuai negotiated hard. The sect would provide protection and ghostly support, but the warlords would swear fealty to Li Yun as their sovereign. They agreed, grudgingly, their eyes on the growing fortifications and the spectral wolf that patrolled the perimeter at night. By the end of the first week, the Vermilion Bird sect was no longer 3 huts. It was a fortified village with a palisade, a watchtower, and a training ground. Over 200 refugees had joined, and the disciples had each taken on apprentices. Shuai taught poisoncraft to a dozen sharp-eyed youths. Ironhoft trained a squad of wolf riders on captured horses. May drilled her students in blind sword forms, their movements guided by instinct and the faint whisper of the Moonblade ancestor. Li Yun watched from his cot, too weak to stand but too stubborn to sleep. The first ancestor's whispers grew louder each night, promises of power, of eternal life, of an empire kneeling at his feet. He gritted his teeth and pushed them away. But they lingered, like smoke in a closed room. On the 10th day, as the sect's new flag of Vermilion Bird on a black field was raised over the gate, a lone rider approached. He wore the colors of the imperial court, gold and crimson. His horse was lathered with sweat, and his face was grim. Steward Lin met him at the gate. The rider handed over a scroll sealed with the emperor's own stamp. "The Son of Heaven offers a truce," the rider announced. "Li Yun must come to the capital alone. He will be given safe passage. The emperor wishes to negotiate." Shuai took the scroll, her expression unreadable. She carried it to Li Yang's cot and read it aloud. When she finished, the hut was silent. Li Yun stared at the ceiling, his white hair spread across the pillow. The first ancestor's whisper coiled in his ear, "Xinghao, go. Seize the throne. I will guide you, Xinghao." He closed his eyes. "Tell the messenger I need 3 days to decide." Shuai nodded, but her hand trembled as she left the room. The carriage rattled through the capital's grand avenues, its wheels grinding against the cobblestones worn smooth by centuries of imperial processions. Li Yun sat alone inside, his once black hair now a stark white, his hands resting on his knees like gnarled roots. The silk robes they had given him etched against his skin, a reminder that this was a costume, not armor. Through the thin curtain, he caught glimpses of the city, merchants hawking spiced meats, children chasing stray dogs, soldiers in crimson cloaks standing rigid at every intersection. The Vermilion Bird sect had become a whispered legend in these streets, a tale of ghosts and plague and a mad sect master who defied General Jiao's army. Li Yun closed his eyes, feeling the pulse of the first ancestor's presence at the edge of his consciousness, a cold tide lapping at his thoughts. The palace loomed ahead, a monstrosity of white marble and gold filigree, its towers piercing the gray sky like the ribs of some ancient beast. Eunuchs in embroidered robes escorted him through corridors lined with silk tapestries depicting the empire's founding legends, battles against demon lords, the crowning of the first emperor, the subjugation of the southern tribes. Li Yang's footsteps echoed in the silence. He had left his disciples behind, despite Shuai's fierce protests and Mei's quiet warning that the future she saw was shrouded in blood. "Trust the ghost," the first ancestor had whispered the night before. "It will keep you alive." The banquet hall blazed with torchlight. A long table groaned under the weight of roasted pheasants, glazed pastries, and flagons of amber wine. The emperor sat at the head, a thin man in his 50s with a crown that seemed too heavy for his neck. Beside him stood a eunuch with a silver tray, pouring wine into a jade cup. "Sect Master Li Yun," the emperor said, his voice carrying the practiced warmth of a merchant greeting a valued customer. "We have heard much of your deeds in the north. The court is grateful for your service against Warlord Dong." He gestured to an empty seat. "Please, join us." Li Yun bowed, the motion sending a spike of pain through his aging joints. "Your Majesty honors me." He took his seat, and servants placed a plate before him. The wine was poured. The emperor raised his own cup, and the courtiers followed suit. "To the peace of the realm," the emperor declared, and drank. Li Yun hesitated, but the first ancestor's whisper coiled in his ear. "Drink. It will not kill you." Yet. He lifted the cup to his lips and swallowed. The wine was sweet, almost cloying, but beneath it lay a metallic tang, something bitter and cold. He set down the cup, and the courtiers smiled. The feast began. Li Yun ate sparingly, watching the emperor's eyes flicker to him between courses. The poison worked slowly at first, a numbness in his fingertips, a heaviness in his chest. He recognized it, a rare concoction called soul's lament, derived from the root of a flower that grew only in the eastern marshes. It was designed to drain a cultivator's qi, leaving them helpless and compliant. The first ancestor's power surged within him, a cold fire that burned the poison's edges but could not extinguish it entirely. Li Yun's vision blurred. He reached into his sleeve, where a small talisman lay hidden, a fragment of the ancestral manifestation hall's power, imbued with the plague lord's echo. He crushed it between his fingers. A wave of green mist seeped from his palm, invisible to the courtiers, and wrapped around his body. The poison in his veins writhed, then dissolved, absorbed by the plague lord's essence. The numbness receded. Li Yun straightened in his chair, and the emperor's smile faltered. "You are resilient," the emperor said, setting down his knife. "I had hoped this would be simpler." He snapped his fingers, and the doors to the hall slammed shut. Guards in black armor filed in, their swords drawn. "Your sect is a threat to the stability of the empire. Your ghosts, your plagues, your shadow beasts, they cannot be allowed to roam free. Surrender the secrets of your ancestral hall, and I will let your disciples live." Li Yun stood, his robes billowing. The first ancestor's laughter echoed in his skull. "They fear you," the ghost said. "Good." Li Yun raised his hand, and the air grew cold. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice steady despite the ache in his bones, "you invited me here to negotiate. Instead, you poison me and surround me with blades. Is this the honor of the imperial court?" The emperor's face reddened. "Honor is for the weak. Guards, take him." The guards lunged. Li Yun's fingers traced a symbol in the air, and the shadow beneath his feet rippled. From it emerged a wolf of living darkness, its eyes twin points of silver fire, the echo of iron hoofs bound, summoned through the talisman. The beast snarled, its jaws clamping around the first guard's sword arm, tearing it from the socket. Blood sprayed across the white marble. Li Yun turned and ran, the shadow wolf at his side, as arrows whistled past his head. He burst through a side door, into a corridor lined with tapestries, and the wolf howled, sending a shock wave that shattered the torches, plunging the hallway into darkness. He fled through the palace's winding passages, his breath ragged, the first ancestor's voice a constant drumbeat in his mind. "They will never accept you. Only I can give you the throne. Say yes, and all your enemies will fall." Li Yun clutched his chest, where the desperate pact scar pulsed with cold fire. He stumbled into a courtyard, the night sky above him, and found the wall 30 feet of smooth stone. The shadow wolf leaped, its form dissolving into a bridge of darkness that carried him over the wall. He landed hard on the other side, his ankle twisting, and limped into the alleys of the capital, the sound of pursuit fading behind him. But the whisper did not fade. "Say yes, Li Yun. Say yes, and the empire is yours." He leaned against a wall, gasping, and looked up at the stars. The first ancestor's voice was no longer a suggestion, it was a demand, cold and patient, waiting for his answer. The war drums thundered across the valley, their rhythm a death knell for the Vermilion Bird sect. Li Yun stood on the crumbling watchtower, his ankle still throbbing from his escape, as General Jiao's 10,000-strong army poured through the mountain pass like a river of steel. The morning sun glinted off their spears, turning the slope into a field of broken light. Shuai's hands trembled as she climbed the ladder to join him. Dark veins crawled up her arms from the Plague Lord's mark on her palm. "Master, I can spread the mist now, but it will drain me. The Plague Lord whispers that I will lose a year for every hour it lingers." "Do it," Li Yun said, his voice hollow. "Buy us time." She closed her eyes. The air grew thick, carrying the scent of rotting flowers. A greenish haze seeped from her skin, rolling down the mountain like a living thing. Below, the front ranks of soldiers coughed, stumbled, and collapsed. Their officers screamed orders, but the mist swallowed sound and sense. Siege towers slowed, their wheels mired in the churning fog. Iron Hoof emerged from the stables, astride his shadow wolf. Behind him, a dozen lesser wolf spectral beasts bound by the Beast King's art paced and snarled. "The mist won't stop them forever," he said, his voice rough. "I'll take the towers." He charged. The wolves followed, howling a sound that was not entirely of this world. They struck the first siege tower like a wave, claws ripping through ropes and wood. Soldiers fell screaming. Iron Hoof's shadow wolf leaped onto the second tower, its jaws snapping through the axles. The tower groaned and toppled, crushing a dozen men beneath it. Mei stood at the Sect's gate, her blind eyes fixed on nothing. Her sword rested on her shoulder, its blade singing a low note. "I see 3 arrows aimed at your heart, master," she said calmly. Duck laughed in 2 breaths. Li Yun obeyed without thinking. An arrow whistled past his ear. Another clattered off the watchtower stone. The third struck a rafter above him. "They have archers on the eastern ridge," Mei continued. "I will blind them." She stepped forward, her sword tracing arcs in the mist. Each movement seemed to anticipate the next volley. Arrows fell around her like rain, but none touched her flesh. She danced through the storm, and with every step, an archer on the ridge cried out and fell. But the army kept coming. Jiao had learned from his previous defeat. He held his elite cavalry in reserve, forcing his infantry to absorb the plague mist and beast attacks. The siege towers were replaced by simple ladders, carried by men who knew they were expendable. Li Yang's lifespan flickered in his chest like a dying candle. He could feel the first ancestor's presence pressing against his mind, a cold weight behind his eyes. "Take my power," the ghost whispered. "All of it. End this farce. Become emperor." "No," Li Yun muttered. "I will not be your puppet." "Then watch them die." A ladder slammed against the wall. Soldiers scrambled up, their faces twisted with hatred. Shuai collapsed beside him, the mist thinning as her strength failed. Iron Hoof's wolves were being driven back by spear walls. Mei's sword slowed, her breath ragged. Li Yun reached into his chest and grasped the thread of his own life. He did not take the first ancestor's full power, he took only a sliver, a fraction of a fraction. The ghost howled in frustration, but the energy flowed into his blade. The sword turned translucent, edged with a cold blue light that seemed to drink the sun. He leaped from the watchtower, landing among the soldiers. The ghostly blade cut through steel armor like paper. Men fell in halves, their blood steaming on the ground. He carved a path toward Jiao, who sat atop his warhorse at the rear, directing the assault. Jiao saw him coming and drew his own sword, a heavy, imperial forged blade. "You are a dead man, Sect master." Li Yun did not answer. He struck. Jiao parried, but the ghostly blade sheared through his sword and bit into his shoulder. Blood sprayed. Jiao screamed, tumbling from his horse. His guards rushed in, but Li Yang's sword swept them aside. "Retreat!" Jiao roared, clutching his wound. "Retreat!" The army faltered. The soldiers, seeing their general bleeding, turned and fled. The siege collapsed into a rout. Li Yun stood in the field, surrounded by the dead, his breath coming in short gasps. He looked at his hands. The skin was wrinkled, the veins dark and prominent. He felt 100 years old. Behind him, the air grew cold. A presence solidified tall, spectral, crowned with a halo of pale fire. The first ancestor's hand rested on his shoulder, fingers like frozen iron. "You took my power," the ghost said, its voice a whisper that carried across the entire valley. "Now you will take my will. The dynasty falls tomorrow." Li Yun could not move. He could only stare at the retreating army as the ghost's grip tightened, and the sun seemed to dim. The morning sun bled red over the ruins of General Jiao's camp. Li Yun stood at the edge of the Sect's broken gate, his robes hanging loose on a frame that had aged decades overnight. His hands trembled not from fear, but from the cold that had settled into his bones since the first ancestor's power first flooded his veins. "We march," he said, his voice a dry rasp. Princess Shui looked up from where she knelt, tending to a wounded disciple. Her eyes, once bright with poison's cunning, now held shadows. "March where, master?" "The army is broken, but—" "To the capital of Warlord Chen." Li Yang's fingers brushed the hilt of his sword. The ghostly blade hummed, eager. "The nearest throne. We take it." Iron Hoof stepped forward, his shadow wolf pacing at his side. "Master, we've barely recovered. The disciples are exhausted. Shui's plague mist costs her years each time she unleashes it." Mei He gestured to the blind sword dancer, who stood motionless, her head tilted as if listening to something beyond the wind. "I see it," Mei whispered. "The path ahead. It's lined with corpses. Some are our enemies." She paused. "Some are ours." Li Yang's jaw tightened. "Then we make sure the balance favors us." They marched at dusk. 300 disciples, farmers, outcasts, those with nowhere else to go followed their master. Li Yun led, his steps steady but his eyes distant. The first ancestor's voice murmured in the back of his mind, a constant tide of promises and commands. "Xinghao, they fear you. They should. You are the heir of vermilion bird. You are the flame that will burn the old world, Xinghao." "Quiet," Li Yun hissed under his breath. Shui glanced at him but said nothing. Warlord Chen's capital was a fortified city named Iron Gate, its walls bristling with crossbowmen and cannon. Chen had heard of Jiao's defeat and had doubled his guards. Banners of crimson and gold snapped in the wind as the Sect approached. "He knows we're coming," Iron Hoof said, scanning the walls. "He'll have the gates barred and the streets trapped." "Then we don't use the gates," Li Yun replied. He turned to Shui. "Can you brew a mist that blinds rather than kills?" Shui nodded slowly. "It will still drain me. But yes. Do it." An hour later, a pale fog rolled through the city's sewers, seeping up through grates and cracks. Guards on the walls clutched their throats, then collapsed, their eyes wide and unseeing. The mist didn't kill, it simply erased. Within the haze, soldiers stumbled, unable to tell friend from foe. Iron Hope's shadow wolves slipped through the mist like ghosts. They tore down the portcullis from within. The disciples poured through the breach. Li Yun walked through the chaos untouched. The first ancestor's power sang in his blood, died in his blade. He cut down a captain who charged him one stroke, clean through armor and bone. The man fell, and Li Yun felt nothing. "Xinghao good. Embrace it, Xinghao." "No," Li Yun whispered, but his hand moved on its own, slashing at a soldier who had already thrown down his weapon. The man's scream cut short. "Master!" Mei's voice cut through the dim. She appeared beside him, her sword a blur of silver. That man surrendered. Li Yun stared at the body. Blood pooled around his feet. I didn't mean to." Mei's blind eyes fixed on him, or rather, on the ghostly shape that flickered behind him. "He's pushing you." You have to fight him. I know. But even as Li Yun spoke, the first ancestor's whispers grew louder. Xinghao, you need me. Without me, you are nothing. A debt-ridden fool with a dying sect, Xinghao. They reached the palace gates. Warlord Chen met them in the courtyard, surrounded by his elite guard, 100 veterans in black steel. Chen himself was a bear of a man, wielding a great axe that gleamed with enchantments. You think you can take my kingdom with a handful of cripples and ghosts? Chen bellowed. Li Yun didn't answer. He raised his sword, and the first ancestor's power erupted from him like a black flame. The ground cracked. The elite guard staggered. Xinghao, kill him. Take his head. Let them see Xinghao. Li Yun charged. The battle was brutal. Iron hoofs wolves tore through the guard's formation. Shuai's mist turned the air to poison. Mei danced through the melee, her precognitive strikes finding gaps in armor before they existed. But Li Yun was a storm. He cut down guard after guard, his movements too fast, too precise. He was no longer fighting, he was reaping. Chen met him blade to blade. The great axe crashed against Li Yang's sword, and sparks flew. Li Yang's arms ached, but the first ancestor's strength pushed him forward. He disarmed Chen with a twist, then drove his sword through the warlord's chest. Chen gasped, blood bubbling from his lips. You're not a man, you're a monster. Li Yun watched the light fade from his eyes. Yes, he whispered. I know. As Chen fell, a surviving guard dropped his weapon and raised his hands. Mercy! I yield. Li Yang's blade rose. No! Mei's voice cracked like a whip. She moved faster than Li Yun had ever seen, her sword a crescent of moonlight. It struck his blade not to parry, but to sever something unseen. A shock wave rippled through the air. Li Yun gasped. The first ancestor's presence ripped away from him like a bandage torn from a wound. He stumbled, his sword clattering to the ground. The ghostly shape of the first ancestor materialized behind him, translucent and snarling. Fool girl, the ancestor hissed. You've blinded yourself for nothing. Mei's eyes were gone, not just sightless, but empty sockets weeping silver light. She had paid the price. Soul severance, she breathed. A technique to cut the ties between master and ghost. You will not take him. She struck. Her blade passed through the first ancestor's form, and the ghost screamed. It fragmented, wisps of darkness scattering like smoke in a gale. The ancestor's voice echoed, fading. You cannot kill me, boy. I am this sect. And this sect will rule with or without you. The ghost vanished. Li Yun fell to his knees. He looked at his hands, old, trembling, human. May your eyes. She smiled, blood trickling from her empty sockets. I saw the future, master. In every path, you were lost. This was the only way to save you. Shuai and Iron Hoof rushed to them. The city was theirs. Warlord Chen's capital had fallen. Banners of the Vermilion Bird sect rose over the palace. But as Li Yun stood, leaning on Iron Hoof's shoulder, he looked toward the horizon. Dust rose in the distance, columns of soldiers, thousands upon thousands, marching under a single imperial banner. The emperor had united his armies. And the first ancestor's laughter echoed in the back of Li Yang's mind, a promise and a threat.